Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. I'm Aaron Porras, here with ILTV's morning briefing.
The army has just located and killed the Palestinian terrorist who is now believed to be the murderer of Rabbi Raziel Shevach. Rabbi Shevach was killed last week in a drive-by shooting attack near the West Bank city of Nablus. At this time, 2 Israeli police officers have been reported wounded in the operation, which also arrested 2 other suspects for the rabbi's murder. Israeli leaders are praising the security forces' quick work in apprehending and neutralizing the alleged killers. The army has been on an intense manhunt for over a week now, finally tracing the suspects to the Palestinian city of Jenin. A violent gunfight erupted between Israeli troops and the suspects, leaving 1 suspect killed. That suspect's name is Ahmed Jarrar, who it turns out is the son of a top Hamas official who was also killed by Israeli troops during the Second Intifada. Prime Minister Netanyahu, though currently in India, also took time from his trip and commended the army's work. He says it symbolizes a serious warning to future would-be terrorists that there's nowhere to hide. The suspect's death has also raised some red flags, though, because it echoes the calls for revenge that landed an I.D.F soldier in jail just earlier this week. That soldier distributed flyers at an I.D.F enlistment center, brandishing the I.D.F's logo, demanding that the rabbi's murderer be killed in revenge. He also called for the re-establishment of the controversial and disbanded Unit 101 that was solely focused on reprisal attacks against Palestinian terrorists. That soldier was arrested for incitement to violence. In an apparent rebuke to the United States, Belgium has just committed $23 million to the United Nations Palestinian Refugee Agency, UNRWA, helping fill the $65 million deficit that was left after President Trump slashed nearly half of United States funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. This comes just days after the United Nations warned of grave danger in light of the aid cuts, because it not only threatens Palestinian dignity, but also regional stability. The Trump administration argues that the move is meant to force Palestinians back to the negotiating table to reignite stalled peace talks, and that other nations should start carrying the weight of funding the Palestinian crisis. Well, Belgium's deputy minister has apparently answered that call and says that the funds will be, quote, dispersed immediately, because for a lot of Palestinian refugees, UNRWA is the last life buoy, end quote. Still, with the United States' $65 million cuts being just the first of many proposed cuts pending changes to UNRWA's operation, coupled with Israel's calls to disband UNRWA altogether and put Palestinian refugees under the auspices of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNRWA's future remains on shaky ground. Sergeant Avraham Ajami, who was injured in a blast in Lebanon 31 years ago, has now passed away and was buried Wednesday morning. Ajami, who was 19 at the time of his injury, spent the next 3 decades in a vegetative state, passing away at the age of 50. Deputy Diplomacy Minister Michael Oren, who spoke at the full military funeral service, said, quote, "I can't remember such a tragic case of a soldier who falls in battle but doesn't fall, who comes back home but doesn't come back, who reunites with his family but doesn't come back and stayed in limbo for 31 years. It's unbearable," end quote. Family and friends remembered Avraham as a shy introvert who loved to help others and was always smiling. Avraham's commanding officer, Joel Lifshitz, said he remembered how they once, quote, tried to educate him and told him to wipe his smile off his face. And he said, okay, but then came back smiling and said, I just can't wipe it off, end quote. Ajami was injured in 1987 in southern Lebanon when a shell exploded in his vicinity. He was evacuated after sustaining serious head injuries, but though he survived the attack, as his sister said at the funeral, he stayed 19. In connection to a September brawl outside of Tel Aviv's Ichilov hospital, 5 people, including a local gang leader, have now been sentenced to prison, with a 6th accomplice awaiting sentencing. Prison sentences ranged from 17 to 25 months for, quote, menacing behavior, causing serious injury as a group, and group assault causing bodily harm, end quote. The defendants were also ordered to pay a total of 120,000 shekels in damages to the security guards that they attacked. The incident was caught on CCTV at the hospital, and according to that and the charge sheet, female defendant Elia Kadosh began to swear and scream at the hospital's medical team over inadequate treatment after arriving there with a friend. She then apparently threatened the staff, saying, quote, wait and see what'll happen to you when my husband arrives, end quote. Well, Kadosh's husband is 35-year-old boyfriend and gang leader David Amoyal, who arrived shortly thereafter with 3 more friends. Amoyal and his entourage then began threatening the guards in question and even attacked them inside the emergency room. That's when one guard was injured, hitting his head on the floor. When Amoyal and the attackers finally ran, they were chased and confronted again outside. They exited their car and, quote, without mercy, began hitting the guards again before finally driving off into the night. The I.D.F. is more than an army. It's also one of the country's most powerful, important social equalizers. and it's always striving to include more and more citizens. Well, this newest I.D.F. program has done exactly that and more by training young Israelis with special needs to work with the Army's furriest, cutest soldiers, the K9 unit. This incredible program is called, quote, Special in Uniform, and it gives disabled Israelis specialized training for a very important job. Right now, the first 20 participants are learning how to operate a dog kennel, handle the Army's K9 dogs, and even how to exercise and feed the dogs. The program's director sees a very unique connection between the animals and the trainees because it develops tolerance, acceptance, and empathy on all sides. The first batch of graduates are already set to be placed in the I.D.F. and police bases, working with all kinds of guard dogs, detection dogs, and even search and rescue dogs. This kind of inclusion is a win-win for everyone and gives these youths a meaningful professional skill that they can even hopefully use to begin new careers in their adult lives too.
That's all for now. I'm Aaron Porras, and see you later with our main daily broadcast from Israel at 2 p.m. Eastern Time.